Okay, we're live. All right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of UnTangled. It's noon Eastern on a Thursday, so here we are. It's Jen Frazier, CEO and founder of Firefly Partners, and I have a special guest today, Pam Trzop, our managing director, also Firefly. We got a Firefly double shot today. So Untangled is a space that we created to help us sort of talk about different topics that are near and dear to nonprofits' hearts about engagement, strategies, technology, the tangled mess we've created behind the scenes to help us move our missions forward. And Untangled, we're here to help shine a little bit of a light, share some best practices, hot takes, which is what we're going to do today, and hopefully help you all out there in nonprofit land just do things a little bit easier, maybe learn some things, share some things. We obviously love to learn from our listeners. So this is always not just us talking but we'll start the dialogue today with Pam. We're going to talk today a little bit about hot takes on fundraising. We throw a lot of acronyms out there: DAF, year to day, YTD, EOY, all the acronyms. We're going to unpack a little bit of that today. But first, Pam, welcome to Untangled.
Thank you. Happy DAF Day, Jen.
I have it marked on my calendar. It's something really important to my family. We talk about it every year.
Later. The cake and balloons.
We had cake earlier. I know it's a little weird before school, but we're like, hey, let's get some sugar. No,
Exactly.
Firefly is cool. So I think let's start with DAFs, unless if you want to tell people a little about your role at Firefly and what you do. Because I said in my kind of preamble, I was like, oh, Pam, not just as our managing director and awesome coworker, but has been a fundraiser inside nonprofits for years. So it's not just coming from the consultant seat, coming from I've been in your seat.
Yes. So I did start my career in fundraising. So I worked in house as a fundraiser for various nonprofits for over 10 years, from doing development coordinator all the way to chief development officer. So I've really sat in these seats, understand the day-to-day work and the challenges that we face in this field.
Awesome.
So bringing that lens to our clients and helping them navigate this world, ever-changing world, and how we can really help leverage their technology so that they can reach their supporters, I think is our sweet spot at Firefly, but also something that I know we are very passionate about and we'll probably talk a lot about. So kind of our conversation is probably like seeing our water cooler conversations that we talk about.
Right. Here we are, just turning the camera on and talk about what we talk about all the time anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's dive into, let's talk about DAFs. I mean, there are like 3 people out there who still don't know what DAFs are, and their importance in sort of a full fundraising portfolio of different programs. What's the DAF and why should nonprofits care?
Yeah. I mean, DAF, is donor advised funds, and they have really been, increasingly becoming more and more popular. And I think the reason why they're so popular and so important for nonprofits is that it's a great way for donors to be able to manage how they're giving and, putting money into a donor advised fund. And there's a lot of money that's like sitting there right now. And so it's really making sure that from a fundraising perspective, that just as you're including stock options, planned giving, in your conversations with your donors, that you're also talking about DAF giving and making sure that DAF giving is really easy for your donors to be able to use. Because right now, folks are putting money in DAFs, and your nonprofit needs to be able to talk to those donors and have that as a way that they give, just as if they gave stock or cash. You really want that. And I think the other big thing about DAF giving as well is that it's so many different donors, high net worth individual donors, monthly donors use this as a way to give to nonprofits. So it's a way that you can also increase your pipeline. So making sure that you're looking and saying, okay, like this person likes to give to DAF or give via DAF. So it's a great way to then like build up your portfolio and pipeline of donors.
Yeah. I think it taps into maybe, a different type of donor potentially. I think a lot of folks obviously really work on just like your major gifts and so individual giving and sort of how you obviously want to build up your sustainers and these types of things. But if you think about, because I've been sort of like, which we'll talk about in a second too, like maybe it's individual giving from a low dollar donor, where that stands versus a DAF is a different way for people to give. And that's where you're like, oh, you're tapping into people who have investment portfolios and things like that, that they'll be able to sort of designate into a donor advised fund, and then they can designate your organization
Mhm.
as the recipient of that. So certainly something for you to look into if you're not doing it already at your organization, because as we're saying, as we're seeing, DAF giving is really on the rise, kind of crazy how much it's taken off in the last few years, and it's really something that folks need to pay attention to. If you think that's not my audience or those aren't my donors or something like that, like that's probably not true.
Right. And
So,
if you are receiving individual donors and you have high net worth individuals who are giving you major gifts, like those are the people who are in DAFs, like you're
right,
saying. And so it's already your audience. So you're basically leaving an opportunity on the table for folks who want to give that way. And so the whole purpose of probably the theme of what we're going to be talking about is that you need to make sure that you are giving every opportunity to your donors to give the way that is good for them.
right.
And so, however that is you need to meet them there.
Yeah,
Check, cash, stock, DAF, it's all what planned giving.
yeah,
There's so many different vehicles, but at the end of the day, it's about making sure that you are meeting your donor, your supporters where they are and what makes sense for them to give.
yeah. They also, um, it's a sticky way of giving. Like there's a lot of benefits to a
Mhm.
DAF. So I think again, like we could go on and we could talk the whole 30 minutes just about DAFs, but certainly if you have questions or you're like, is this right for me? Happy to chat about that with you at any time and tell you more. And obviously there's lots of folks out there who this is what they do all day, like a chariot and things like that. So we want to make sure that folks are just really aware. Since it's DAF day to day, we thought we'd highlight a little bit of that. So but in addition to DAFs, so like you think about what's going on, the other thing we wanted to talk about was sort of what's going on in this crazy year that we're in here, 2025. I don't know really what's going on any given day. Seems like it's a new craziness, but I'm kind of like, what's been going on with donors so far this year? In my mind, I'm like, I think about crisis giving, and does a crisis or like a clear opponent like motivate giving, or because the economy is all crazy, are people like shrinking in their giving? What are we seeing so far this year?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens this end of year giving, because I think to your point, like there's been a lot of articles written around like what happened at the end of last year, kind of where we are midpoint. I think
Hmm.
the one thing that we're seeing, and I think Chronicle of Philanthropy wrote an article around kind of what is happening with like mega donors and foundations is that what right now the trend is saying that they're staying consistent in what they're funding. So they're not chasing like trends. That they really are staying focused on their giving priorities. At least that's what we're seeing from 24 to 25.
Hmm.
So, like, will that stay, um, as you're saying, heading into end of year? I think right now the indication is that it's there. I think
Yeah.
the other thing that we're really seeing is that although dollar raised is up overall, that the
Hmm.
donor count is down. So I think that's an indication that, again, like, there is money at the higher levels for higher net worth individuals. And then one thing that I also really like to look at is like what's happening with consumer trends, because I think that's a
Hmm.
really great indicator of how people are spending or not spending or
Yeah.
where they're
Right.
spending. And some of the sectors that I also really look at is like luxury, like what's happening at the luxury, because that's also an indicator of like, high net worth individuals and how they're spending.
Understanding.
So that is slowing right now, but there's still money being spent.
Hmm.
A lot of brands right now you're seeing are now starting to do a lot more kind of luxury experiences within their brand. So if you think about like Disney and Disney theme parks, there's a lot of like upgrades available that they're really targeting to say, like, you skip the line or have this like white glove experience.
Ah,
So there is a lot of like money that people are spending to have these much more like premium experiences.
mhm,
Um, consumers are shopping earlier, but also browsing longer.
hmm,
So I think like as we're thinking about what does this mean and how does this apply to like nonprofits, I think some of the themes and trends that I would think about heading into year end or just like applying to a major gift program is thinking about, okay, a donor might want to like understand your mission more, might be coming to your website more often to try to understand before
mm,
they give a donation, that just like longer kind of browsing time. And then also, like, I think that there is kind of a trend, and this has always been there, but even more about having more personalized experiences, right? So, really wanting to make sure that if I give to this nonprofit, that I'm not just another donor, but I'm getting that personalized kind of white glove experience for like, whatever that means for your organization. But a lot of times that can just also kind of boil down to how you're sending them emails and like
mhm.
personalizing the content to their interests and their behavior. So it doesn't mean that you have to, create a whole like white glove donor program, where you're, doing all this extra stuff, but it could really just mean leveraging your technology to make sure your donors really feel that they are not just, one in a sea of many, but really, that they count and they matter because I
Yep.
think that is like what we're seeing at a consumer level, for a lot of these like pools of folks.
Yeah. I mean, we know this, I think, and everyone strives to achieve the Amazon checkout experience if at all possible. We know that obviously there's billions of dollars going into the experience to try and make that as frictionless as possible. But there are lots of ways inside your tech to make it frictionless and, like we said, sort of make all the options that a donor slash consumer is expecting in
Mhm.
that process to make it easy. Don't make them get up away from their computer to go get their wallet. Like,
Yeah.
don't they will
Don't
not
make me get off the couch.
don't make it won't happen. They're not coming back. So
Right.
if they hit a snag or a barrier in any way along that process, chances are they're gone and then they
Yeah.
won't come back. And then to your point, really just personalization does not mean merge your name in, as we
Yeah.
know. There's lots of opportunities to really create a much more personalized experience. Now, this it doesn't mean you have 16,000 segments and are spending like countless hours writing all this detailed, personalized copy and things like that. There's ways to sort of say, what has my donor done in these sort of, even larger, segments to show that I'm paying attention to
Yeah.
what they're doing and you display that in a user experience for your donor. It counts. It
Yeah.
counts a lot. And that's really expected.
It's
That's
expected, and I think going back to a point that you made, Jen, around, like, kind of the Amazon effect, right? So, yes, there's tons of money on the consumer brands, huge teams, big tech that's, like, fueling this, but I also think one of the important things that if anyone, like, listens, one of the biggest takeaways is that there's a lot of advanced, technology that's available to nonprofits that's actually geared towards nonprofits. So there's a lot of great platforms out there, and I think that one of the things that, like, we talk a lot about is how you really leverage that technology
Mhm.
to be much more aligned with what's happening on the consumer brand level so that your supporters feel that same frictionless giving and that donor experience that is, happening, it's like the Amazon card and like the deep personalization that Netflix offers, that like these aren't just like one, they're not nice to haves anymore, that they're kind of a must, but it's also not something that's like a dream that's like not attainable for nonprofits. Like there's technology that's affordable and available to
Mhm.
nonprofits, that also is easy for teams to use and not something that's like you have to go build out like a 20-person team,
Right.
that you can really have like, your development or marketing team help function with this. So, you know, you probably have the technology or you're close to having it. It's just a matter
Mhm.
of how you're kind of organizing yourself internally to do these things. So
Yeah.
again, this isn't like, oh, we have to go build out a whole like technology team to have like Amazon like, you know, experiences. You are much closer than you probably realize.
Much closer than you think. So, I know the burning question for folks is it's October 9th today, and end of year is about a hot second. And obviously, we know most of you are really way down the road of like your bigger strategies and your content and these types of things. But what can folks do right now? Like you just said, you don't have to, spend gobs of time and money and whatever to build up this whole team and build this whole thing. What can folks do still now to help maybe add in some of this personalization or a little bit more of that frictionless, consumer experience with their tools and through their journeys that they want to create for donors through the end of year at this
Yeah.
point?
So I think the first thing is looking at your donation form, right? So it really must be fast, mobile friendly. You need to have um, like Apple Pay, Venmo, PayPal. Like you need to be able to like get people to be able to like sit on
Mhm,
their couch or I'm in line or whatever to like be able to give very quickly. And then also like as we start this conversation is making sure that you're talking to your donors around other ways that they can give like DAF stocks and making sure that that is part of their giving. So a
mhm,
lot of donation forms you can add these things on pretty quickly. Um,
mhm,
so it's definitely something I think that is very attainable
mhm.
to put in on year end. And I think the biggest thing is if you don't have the ability for people to give, um, via a virtual wallet like Apple Pay, I would definitely encourage getting that on
Yeah,
your donation form this end of year.
yeah.
I think as you mentioned, Jen, I think segmentation is really important to making sure that you're having like different asks for like your different segments to making sure that you're really kind of communicating based on their behavior.
Mhm,
So, I really have folks really think about their segmentation.
mhm,
And then, as you're moving into 2026, really set up more robust segmentation. So it's not just about, donation frequency, but more of like behavior based and different things like that. Which again, like a lot of these tools and platforms really offer that ability.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and then, like again, like don't wait until like December 31st. Start early, start to really like, get these asks out. But also, I think the biggest thing too is that you really want to make sure you're not just like blasting emails every week to donors with the same ask. Like you really
Mhm.
want to make sure that one, you're definitely taking people off the list who have already given as a baseline, but also making sure that like you're not just in a sea of like, getting in a delete pile. Like you wanna make sure your message is landing and folks are engaging with it and not just like sending your list.
Over and over and over. Yeah. I think one thing that you said early on, which I think is important for folks to hear, is this browsing longer before a purchase is also something like if you haven't incorporated um, some more of this, like about your organization, the impact, the work, the outcomes. I mean, this is really the storytelling that
Mhm.
obviously motivates people, but really try and spend time right now, even in those end of year sequences, to do a little bit more of that education and impact and storytelling that really gets at the heart of the mission of your organization and the impact that you have in your communities with the specific work you're doing. Nothing will motivate somebody more than that. We all know every purchase is an emotional, transaction. There's very little rational thinking that goes into this. So you have to kind of, yeah, you do have to tie in without, being exploitative or any of that kind of stuff, but really just tell the true stories. I think back to the um, conversation I had with Anna Hetzel a few weeks ago, just about be really specific too, like really talk about the impact in just clear, plain language. People
Mhm.
love to just see the impact. I think that thing Pam and I were talking about before is getting caught up in internal speak or internal priorities and really put yourself in the recipient mindset. Like they're busy, they're running around, they got a million things going on, end of year is hectic, blah, blah, blah. What's the thing that might stand out that gets their attention? But then obviously then the process has to be again quick, seamless, easy, frictionless,
Mhm.
a lot of options available to them. Um, and again, a lot of these things I think are still doable. Other things on your you can still do this list?
Yeah, I think, really also making sure that, your processes and systems, your staff bandwidth and data flow can handle volume because that's the idea.
Mhm,
We're also getting a lot of volume. So just really making sure that like your team is aligned to make sure all of this is happening. And I think just one thing, before I finish the list, but one thing, Jen, that you said that I think is like really important to like call out is that nurturing and stewarding of your donors. Like it really does start. It's like a thing that should be happening all year round. And we're not just waiting until like campaign season to like
mhm,
talk to our donors. And so campaign season is a great way, obviously, to get people to donate, but also to understand like what interests them and what motivates them. So that
mhm,
the next time the campaign season comes around, you're using that information to build out segments, to have targeted messaging. Like if you're working at like an animal welfare organization. Maybe someone's really passionate about cats, but you're still sending them things about dogs. But like you could say, like, we're only sending things about cats now, and then really getting to like that interest driven behavior and gift. And so then, you know, really making sure that if you have an email newsletter, like they're getting a welcome series so that they really feel like they're part of your organization. It's bringing them in to that. So that's a longer, like making sure that that's at the top of your list for 2026.
mhm,
But I think even to your point of like, how do you think about it? It's like you should be starting right now is just to your list. Part of your campaign strategy should be some emails or messaging around what you do and why you do it that has an ask in there, but is also really more about like why we exist as an organization, what
mhm.
problems we're trying to solve.
Yeah,
So folks like get excited about like wanting to donate and feel part of it. I think it's like a big thing. So just wanted to highlight that. I think what you said is like really, really important. And
yeah.
um, you know,
I yeah, it probably goes without saying, but obviously there's a lot of testing that
yes,
needs to happen
testing.
right now, a ton of testing. Like, the last thing you ever wanna have happen right now in end of year is also, like, an error with the tech, or the processing doesn't go through, or, all these, like, potential technical glitches. So test the living daylights out of everything. Every time you make an update to any form or any of your emails, any of those click through links, just really make sure you're testing to the nth
Mhm,
degree so that you when it goes live, the consumer experience is as seamless and glitch free
mhm.
possible. Because we
Yeah,
don't want anything to get unfortunately hung up on like a technical
yeah.
error or something that was overlooked. That's like something I think people go, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the same form we used last year or whatever. We just made a couple updates. Okay, well, retest it.
Yeah, and I also too that test for that, but also do A/B testing of your subject
Right.
lines, the copy, and then, adjust, like look at the analytics and then adjust before you launch your next part
The
of the
big one.
campaign. Just
Yeah.
because like you didn't get as many donations in the first round doesn't mean that it's not that something's ultimately like wrong with the campaign. You might just need to tweak your subject line or put a different photo in. And so really focusing on like A/B testing and really looking at the analytics is like really important. Not just the amount of money that was donated via a link, because it's really the overall what is happening for that whole analytics.
Yeah. The whole trend and the whole campaign. So, all right, we've covered a lot of ground. I think the biggest thing that we like to do on this show too is to sort of do recaps. And so folks can walk away. Obviously, we'll have a post summarizing the key takeaways out of this conversation. Lots of good tips, lots of good ideas. It was a lot of ground was covered. What's maybe our top few hot takes summarizing for folks out there?
Yeah. I mean, DAFs are exploding, so you need a strategy in place now. This isn't just, one of the things that, people will talk about and then you won't hear about it again. It's definitely here to stay. So make sure that you definitely are getting a strategy and you're talking to your donors about it. Um, Trends are showing that there's still money out there. So, how you get it is really how you engage with your supporters.
Mhm.
So we at this point have all indications that it can still be a really strong end of year for many nonprofits. So definitely going in with saying like there's money, we just need to find it and get it is the key, as always with any fundraising.
Right.
And then, your donors are consumers, and your consumers and donors have an expectation of what they want as their digital experience to be. So it's like, as we said, it's Amazon level ease with Netflix level personalization. So how are you communicating to your audience about their interest, and then making sure that they can make donations, sign up for newsletters, whatever conversion point you have that they need to be able to do with ease.
Yeah. And then definitely get the tech, in tip-top shape, make
Yeah.
sure that everything is ready to go, and do lots of testing. I think is
Yeah.
our final hot take for everybody, but definitely lots of great things to think about in this sort of feels like a strange year, because it is, and we'll see. I think there's a lot of predictions about what end of year will look like for nonprofits in this kind of turbulent atmosphere. But again, I don't think there's a need to panic. I think it's, again, a way to sort of look back and sort of meeting your donors where they are, giving them different options for giving, and just making the process pretty seamless. I know that's all easier said than done. But you can do it. There's still time, and lots of great information. Thanks, Pam, for all of that amazing wisdom and thoughts for folks out there as the end of year sweat is starting to trickle down the brows of a lot of our fundraisers out there. So I'm going to be out for the next 2 weeks. I know, don't cry too hard. It's going to be okay. I've got some conferences to travel, but I will be back at the end of the month for my spooky Halloween edition on October 30th with my friend Ted Fickus from Bright Plus 3. And it's kind of like, it's a little bit of a spooky topic, but it's mostly, we were talking about the crazy year that went, and he said, I just want to help people think about how to stay calm, so where our title is how to cope, plan, and not lose your shit every single day, which is a good one. Cause I feel like sometimes that's what space we're in. So we're gonna be talking about that with Ted Fickus on the 30th. Until then, have a great couple weeks. And Pam Trzop, Managing Director here at Firefly, thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good one, everybody. Have a great rest of your Thursday.